Welcome, wherever you are, in your bed under soft blankets, or simply resting, letting your mind float. You're about to take a journey into the past, but not into the kind of past you've memorized for a test. No kings of Europe, no textbook timelines. Tonight we go deeper, into a world that pulses with life, thick with heat and humidity, and full of sounds, but not the kind you expect. We are headed into the rainforest, to Central America, to the time of the Maya. Imagine it. The air is heavy and sweet, filled with the scent of moss, flowers, and decay. Bird calls echo from trees taller than houses. Stone temples peek out from green hills like forgotten gods. And beneath it all people lived. They farmed, they feared, they worshipped, and they watched the skies. They built vast cities, then left them. They believed the stars were stories. And that blood kept the universe running. But don't worry, we're not here for adrenaline. We're here to listen, slowly, to the rhythm of a lost civilization. Tonight's journey will unfold in 4 quiet chapters. First, we'll feel the strain of a day in the life of a Maya maize farmer. Mud, heat, and hunger in the shadow of divine expectation. Then we'll climb stone steps into the court of Pakal the Great, one of the few Maya rulers we can trace with confidence. After that, we'll explore the so-called collapse of Maya civilization, and how it was less an explosion than a long, quiet fading. And finally, we'll step into the sacred world of Maya royalty, where astronomy, ritual, and power converged under the stars. So if you're ready, let the past unfold like a leaf in the sun. Let's begin. The first light of day is not golden here. It's filtered, green through the jungle canopy, broken into pieces by leaves, vines, and the slow sway of trees. You do not wake in a bed. You rise from a mat on the ground. Backsir, your stomach already whispering for food. There's no time for lingering. The day is short and the work is long. You are a maize farmer. Maize is life, literally. Your mythology says the gods made humanity from maize dough. To farm it is sacred, but also exhausting. Your tools are simple. A wooden digging stick, your hands, and the hope of decent rain. The soil isn't kind. It depletes quickly in the jungle. So you and your kin use slash-and-burn agriculture, clearing patches, burning the underbrush, and planting among the ashes. But each plot lasts only a few years. Then you move, deeper into the trees, always further. You sweat constantly. Even in the shade, the humidity clings to your skin like a second shirt. Insects bite at your ankles. Snakes sometimes watch from the brush. And overhead, the low whoop of howler monkeys marks the rhythm of your morning. There's little room for idleness. The gods do not wait. Your family needs to eat. And maize is not your only crop. You must also plant beans, squash, cacao, tending them all by hand. By midday your muscles burn. Your skin prickles from the sun. And the small gourd of water you brought is already nearly empty. When you return home, your meal is simple. Few tortillas, maybe a bit of chili. Perhaps some tamales if you're lucky. There is little meat. That is for rituals or rare feasts. But there is always religion. The gods are not distant beings. They are here now. In the corn, the trees, the storms, the stars. They watch you. They need you. And sometimes they need more than prayers. You know of sacrifices. Sometimes just blood. Your own, offered in drops through thorn pricks. Other times more. But that is for the priests. Not for you. Still you fear the signs. Bad harvest. Too much rain or too little. A child born under an unlucky calendar sign. All are omens. Night you sleep lightly. The jungle hums and chirps and growls. But louder than all of that is your hunger. For rest. For relief. For the chance that tomorrow maybe the maize will grow better. This is your world. A world of motion and myth. Of sweat and sacred soil. Of endless effort. And yet, it continues, because without you, the temples fall quiet, the gods grow restless, and the world, so your stories say, might end. Now let the rhythm shift. From the rustling leaves and sweating backs of maize farmers, to something still, structured, almost eternal. Imagine yourself walking through the ancient city of Palenque. It is not the largest of Maya cities, but it is among the most elegant. Its temples are refined. Its carvings are delicate. Its buildings feel less like fortresses and more like poems in stone. Palenque rests in what is now southern Mexico, a lush region hemmed by jungle and river. In its time, it flourished as a regional power, though always in the shadow of giants like Tikal or Calakmul. And it is here, amid the misty hills and whispering trees, that a boy was born in the year 603. A boy named Kinich Janab Pakal. To the world he would become Pakal the Great. His name means sun shield, a title of power and protection. But when he came to the throne, he was only 12. His mother, Lady Sak Kuk, ruled as regent, an unusual but not unheard of act in Maya society. Women could lead. They could be patrons of art, keepers of calendars, guardians of dynasties. Together, mother and son steadied Palenque after a time of turbulence. The city had been defeated by neighboring powers just a few years before Pakal's birth. But the young king would not be content with mere survival. As he matured, he transformed Palenque into something more, a city of vision, a place of architecture, mythology, and prestige. He reigned for nearly 70 years, a remarkable span in any era, especially in one where warfare, disease, and drought loomed large. Under Pakal's rule, Palenque became known for its elaborate temples and its intricate stucco work. Imagine the soft white sheen of fresh plaster, glistening in the humid air, telling stories of gods, ancestors, and cosmic journeys. Pakal didn't just want to rule, he wanted to be remembered. He commissioned structures that still stand today. Most famously the Temple of the Inscriptions. It rises quietly from the jungle, with broad steps that seem to invite contemplation rather than awe. Inside, a secret stairway descends deep into the pyramid, and at its end, the tomb of Pakal himself. His burial chamber is a marvel, carved stone sarcophagus lid, depicting Pakal at the center of a cosmic scene. He appears to be falling into, or rising from, the jaws of the underworld. Around him swirl symbols of rebirth, divinity, and the celestial tree that links earth to sky. For centuries, this tomb remained hidden. The jungle covered it, the people forgot it, but the stone remembered. When archaeologists rediscovered it in the 20th century, it became one of the greatest Maya finds of all time. And yet, it is quiet, not a chamber of gold or war trophies, but a place of symbolism, of silence. Pakal ruled not only through might, but through time. He associated himself with great cycles, mythic events that took place thousands of years in the past, even before his birth, claiming a kind of cosmic legitimacy. And perhaps that's what mattered most. Not conquest, not territory, but being a thread in the fabric of eternity. When you walk among Palenque's ruins today, you can still see his legacy, not in grandeur, but in detail. The narrow corridors, the delicate latticework windows, the hieroglyphs that murmur names we can almost pronounce. Pakal is one of the rare Maya rulers we can trace across time, from childhood to reign to death, and into the legends his stones still whisper. And just as his architects carved his story into walls, we too mark his presence, quietly, in the folds of memory and moonlight. Certainly, let us gently shift now, from a king's carved eternity in limestone, to a more elusive, broader question. What really happened to the Maya? The word collapse often conjures dramatic images. Crumbling temples, cities abandoned overnight, a people swallowed by jungle and time. But history, like sleep, moves slowly, drift, shift, fades out before it ends. And the story of the Maya is no exception. There was no single day, no flaming downfall. no loud final breath. Instead, there was a long, slow unraveling. Let's begin in the classic period, roughly from 250 to 900 CE, when Maya civilization reached its architectural and intellectual height. Cities like Tikal, Copan, Calakmul, and Palenque bustled with activity. Scribes etched glyphs onto stone. Astronomers watched the skies with a quiet patience. Farmers tended their fields beneath the watchful gaze of kings. Then, something changed. Not all at once, not everywhere, but gradually, consistently. Across the southern lowlands, monument building slowed, then stopped. Dates once proudly recorded ceased appearing on stelae. Temples were left unfinished. Bull courts emptied. Some cities like Tikal persisted longer. Others like Copan saw their last royal monuments raised, never to be followed by another. What caused this long nightfall? The answer, like mist through trees, is layered. One factor was climate. Evidence from lake sediment cores and cave formations shows a period of intense, prolonged drought. Not just a single dry season, but decades where rainfall became erratic or vanished. For a society deeply tied to rain-fed agriculture, this was more than inconvenience. It was existential. Water was life, and maize needed water. Without it, fields withered, reservoirs dried, people moved or died. But drought alone does not explain everything. Environmental stress acted upon a system already strained. The Maya lowlands were densely populated. Cities rose close together, their elites competing not only for tribute and prestige, but also for scarce natural resources. Deforestation for fuel and construction made erosion worse. Soil depleted, rivers clogged with sediment, and alongside environmental pressure came political instability. Warfare was common in Maya society. Not all-out war as we might imagine, but ritualized conflict between noble houses, raids to capture elite prisoners, struggles for prestige. As cities weakened, alliances fractured, neighbors turned on one another. The delicate web of intercity relations frayed. Imagine a ruler in the 9th century, sitting in a crumbling palace, his scribes gone, his farmers scattered, the rains late again. The ritual calendar continues, but the sacrifices are fewer. People whisper, they leave. Over time, some cities were simply let go, not destroyed, not burned, just abandoned, one house at a time, one altar left unworshipped. And yet, while the southern lowlands saw decline, the Maya did not disappear. To the north, in cities like Uxmal and Chichen Itza, new centers rose, adopting and adapting the old traditions. To the highlands, Maya communities persisted. They farmed, they prayed, they kept their calendars. Even after the Spanish arrived, many Maya peoples maintained their languages and customs. They are still here. The collapse was never an ending, only a transformation. Cities rose and fell, power shifted, but the thread remained unbroken. The jungle slowly reclaimed the plazas, its roots cradling what was left behind. And for centuries, the world forgot, until the explorers came, their boots crunching over fallen lintels, until the scholars came, brushing away vines and silence, until the glyphs began to speak again. And now, in quiet hours like this one, we listen, not to an end, but to a change, not to a fall, but to a folding, a civilization breathing out, and continuing on, in a different form. You said, continue, course. Let us now leave behind the slowly fading cities of the classic period, and step deeper into the inner sanctums of Maya power. Temples, observatories, sacred courts. This final segment draws us into a world of incense, ritual, and quiet splendor. Imagine yourself waking to the muted sounds of dawn within a Maya temple complex. The air is warm, thick with dew and the scent of copal incense, already burning in braziers tended by temple attendants. You are royalty. born into a sacred lineage that traces its blood to gods and sky serpents. Your home is not merely a palace. It is a cosmic machine, a place where the heavens, the underworld, and the living world meet, stitched together in limestone and ceremony. The temple complex is vast, its plazas wide and echoing beneath the call of tropical birds. The buildings are aligned not for beauty, but for astronomy, set with breathtaking precision to mark solstices, equinoxes, lunar cycles. Here to rule is not to dominate, but to balance, to maintain the harmony between worlds, to mediate between gods and people. Each day unfolds as a sequence of rituals. There are no idle royals here. Even a prince must study glyphs, chants, omens. The codices, folding books made of bark and lime wash, hold vast knowledge: astronomy, medicine, divination, and history. You must memorize the past to guide the present. And when the calendar deems it, when Venus rises just so, you will step out onto the platform of the temple, draped in jaguar pelt, your face painted in red and black, colors of the earth and the night. Below, the crowd gathers. They do not cheer, they watch. Royalty is not entertainment, it is obligation. A Maya ruler is not a king in the way we might imagine. He is a sacred conduit, responsible for offerings, for readings of the heavens, for ensuring the gods are satisfied and the rains come on time. Offerings take many forms: food, precious feathers, stone and shell, and sometimes blood. Ritual bloodletting, while startling to modern ears, was seen as a sacred duty. Royal blood, offered through carefully enacted rites, was believed to open channels to the divine. It was not savage, nor done in frenzy. It was solemn, controlled, expected. And alongside these weighty responsibilities were moments of respite. Chocolate, frothed and spiced with chili or honey, was a royal luxury, served in painted vessels. So too were intricate games of pits. The Maya ball game, played not for idle sport, but often as a reenactment of cosmic battles, the ball bouncing between worlds. The royal court was filled with artisans, scribes, priests, warriors. There were diplomatic marriages, lavish feasts, and gifts exchanged across cities. Object, from a carved jade pendant to a finely woven cloak, carried layers of meaning: ancestry, allegiance, the divine right to rule. Even the buildings themselves bore stories. Walls inscribed with long sequences of glyphs, detailing dynasties and eclipses, wars and weddings. A palace might include a steam bath, a garden for herbs and flowers, private chambers, though not always for solitude. Royal life was lived in public view, under the gaze of gods and people alike. And while grandeur surrounded you, so did pressure. Your birth was a promise, prophecy. You must produce heirs. You must read the skies. You must not fail. Because failure wasn't just political, it was cosmic imbalance. The rains might falter, the maize might die, people might turn away. So, behind the stone masks and feathered crowns, beneath the polished jade and careful pageantry, was a weight carried from cradle to grave. And still, the rhythm of court life moved on. As the sun cast long shadows through the temple corridors, musicians played soft wooden flutes, elders chanted. A new fire was lit in the hearth, and above it all, the stars waited, as they always had. Let your thoughts settle now. Amid the flickering torchlight of that ancient court, beneath stone lintels and ceaseless stars. When you're ready, I'll guide you into the final closing reflection, a gentle return to the present, and a quiet honoring of the past. So now, we come to rest. From the dense jungles of the Yucatan, to the great stone cities rising from green earth, from the humid fields of maize, to the sacred courts of royalty, we have drifted through the rhythms of Maya life, not as tourists or treasure hunters, but as quiet observers, tracing the footsteps of those who rose before dawn, worshipped with folded leaves and candlelight, watch the skies, and shape time itself. And what remains? Not just pyramids or glyphs, but memory. A sense of how deeply human lives were woven into the land, into the stars, into each other. How hardship and brilliance walked hand in hand. And perhaps, as you lie here now, your breath slowing, your thoughts softening into the spaces between sentences, you might reflect on how much care went into every gesture of their world. The careful tending of crops in thin soil, the steady hand carving gods from stone, the ritual words whispered under a full moon. The Maya lived close to the edge, not just of empire, but of understanding, of mystery. They endured drought, conflict, abandonment, and yet their stories still echo. In vines and ruins, in surviving languages, in stars still mapped by ancient math. And here you are, wrapped not in bark cloth or obsidian, but in soft sheets, not lulled by drums or flutes, but by the gentle hush of this story, and the stillness of your own breath. Let the weight of the day fall away now. There is no maze to tend, no gods to please, no blood to spill, only the quiet, only the stars, and the long, slow drift into sleep. Good night, and thank you for wandering through time with me. We'll meet again in another story, another forgotten place, filled with the steady rhythm of lives once lived. Until then, rest well. Crescent moon, welcome. Take a moment to settle in, let your breathing slow, and allow yourself to drift gently into a quieter rhythm. Tonight, we'll wander back through winding, cobbled alleys of revolutionary Paris. But not through the grand halls or the fiery speeches. No, we'll slip into the cold, damp corners, into the forgotten spaces where the voices of the poor, the broken, and the anonymous were swallowed by the roar of history. This is a story not of revolution's thunder, but of its dust, a tale of aching backs and hollow stomachs, of whispers and rumors in poorly lit corridors, of children who vanished behind iron doors, and nobles who danced as the floor gave way. You'll hear of a crumbling king, a vanishing heir, and a golden palace oblivious to the tide rising outside its gates. But we begin with the laborers, with the Parisian poorhouse workers, with you. Imagine yourself waking in a bed that is not your own. The mattress beneath you is thin and straw-filled, and the wool blanket is stiff from repeated use. It smells faintly of mildew and something older, a blend of sweat and disinfectant soap. The room is shared. Rows of cots line the wall, some already empty, others filled with the slow-breathing shadows of fellow paupers still lost in sleep. You're in the Salpêtrière poorhouse, a hulking stone edifice that looms like a fortress on the southern edge of Paris. Originally a gunpowder factory, it's been reimagined over the decades as a space to contain the forgotten. Women mostly. Widows, orphans, the mentally unwell, the inconvenient. And you now, a laborer conscripted not for your skill, but your sheer need. The bell tolls just before dawn. A heavy, slow clang that echoes down the stone corridors. There's no time to linger. The rhythm of your day is not your own. It belongs to the overseers and the revolution's insatiable appetite for order. You pull on your rough-spun garments. They chafe at your skin, still damp from last night's sweat. Breakfast, if it can be called that, is a crust of bread and a ladle of thin soup. Sometimes it's warm, sometimes not. Your hands are already rough from the previous day. The calluses split easily in the cold air. Today's task, stone breaking. In the yard, great heaps of rubble await. You squat beside them with a hammer that feels too heavy and yet never quite enough. Each strike sends a jolt up your arm. Each breath you draw is filled with dust and a faint trace of coal smoke. The work is endless, meant not to build but to discipline. This isn't about productivity, it's about control. A fellow worker, Marie, you think her name is, whispers that someone was pulled aside yesterday for saying the king's name aloud. Not praising, not insulting, just saying. She was gone by morning. There is no room for opinion here. Not royalist, not Jacobin. To be seen as either is to be suspicious. And suspicion in these days is a death sentence whispered behind closed doors. It doesn't matter that you're poor, that you own nothing. In revolutionary France, even the ragged can be enemies of the state. When the midday bell tolls, your fingers tremble from exhaustion. Lunch is more of the same. You chew slowly, eyes scanning the yard. Some of the guards wear tricolor ribbons proudly pinned. Others speak little and smile less. One tells you that your papers are missing a stamp. You're not sure what stamp, but he says you'll be reported if it's not resolved. You nod and murmur a promise. The knot in your stomach grows tighter. Afternoons are worse. The sun begins to bake the courtyard, turning the dust into a slow-breathing haze. The rhythm of stone on stone, of coughs, of tired grunts, becomes almost hypnotic. The hours stretch. One bleeds into the next. Until finally, the evening bell tolls again. Back in your cot, you stare at the ceiling. You've earned no money. Your body aches. You dream of bread. Not because you're starving, though you are, but because it's simple. Something you might hold. Something that might fill you. This is your life now. Not quite prison. Not quite freedom. Caught in that gray, crumbling space between the two. Just one more shadow in the poorhouse. Now we drift upward and outward. From the stone courtyards of the poorhouse to the echoing chambers of power. Though even here, in the grandeur of what was once monarchy, a certain silence lingers. It is December 1792. The king is no longer called king. He is citizen Louis Capet now, stripped of title and ceremony. He resides in the Temple prison, a medieval fortress turned revolutionary jail. Its heavy stone walls echo with the sounds of shifting guards, hushed voices, and the occasional clank of keys. Louis XVI, once the most powerful man in France, now spends his days in a plain room with barred windows. The furniture is simple, the food decent for a prisoner, but it's the stillness that defines his world. Each day he reads, walks in the enclosed yard, writes in a journal, plays with his son when permitted. He is not frantic. He does not cry out. If anything, he seems resigned. Outside, however, Paris is anything but calm. The revolution has turned inward. The enemies are no longer just monarchs abroad. They are moderates, neighbors, former allies. And Louis is the most symbolic enemy of all. The convention debates his fate for weeks. Not just whether he is guilty, few question that now, but whether France can ever truly begin anew while he still draws breath. The charges are numerous, and most are political. Conspiring with foreign powers, trying to flee the country, firing upon his own citizens. The trial itself is not a trial as we would know it. There is no impartial jury, no judge. Just a series of impassioned speeches in the National Convention. Arguments not for innocence or guilt, but for punishment or mercy. Robespierre, thin and severe, stands before the assembly and declares, Louis must die so the Republic can live. On January 20, 1793, the vote is cast. A slim majority, death. No appeal. No delay. The next morning, Louis is allowed to say goodbye to his family. He embraces his children, speaks gently to his wife Marie Antoinette. He asks for calm. He seems more concerned for them than for himself. At dawn, the sky is overcast. The streets hum with nervous energy. The route from the Temple to the Place de la Révolution is lined with National Guardsmen. Drummers march ahead. The cart carrying Louis follows behind, flanked by mounted soldiers. It moves slowly, almost too slowly, through the grey streets of Paris. He is silent for most of the journey. Some say he prayed. Others say he observed the crowd, noting how many watched in silence. It's said one woman fainted as the cart passed. The guillotine stands waiting. Constructed just the year before, it has already seen many condemned. But today, it gleams more sharply. Or perhaps it only seems that way. Louis steps down, walks steadily. A priest walks with him, murmuring Latin. At the scaffold, he attempts to speak. My death, he says. I die innocent of all the crimes laid against me. The words are muffled by the drums, which roll louder now. Deliberately, some say. He is laid beneath the blade. There is a pause. Then the heavy thunk of the mechanism. Silence follows. Then a cheer. Then another silence, deeper still. Blood is spilled. A monarch is gone. In France does not pause. There is no national mourning. No songs. Only more lists. More arrests. The gears of the revolution continue to turn. At the temple, Louis's wife and children do not yet know. They are told the next morning. There is no official funeral. No procession. Only a quiet burial in an unmarked grave. Just another name crossed out. In the poorhouses, the event is noted in whispers. Some feel relief. Others dread. For if even a king can fall, what safety is there for anyone else? Let us now turn from the guillotine and into a quieter chamber. One where shadows deepen and time becomes soft around the edges. We leave the noise of judgment and punishment behind, and enter the hushed mystery of a missing child. The boy was once called Louis Charles. Prince Louis, the Dauphin of France. Born in 1785. Second son of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette. After his elder brother died young, Louis Charles became heir to the throne at the age of 4. He was small, delicate in constitution, fond of animals and shy with strangers. At Versailles, he was dressed in lace and velvet, taught by tutors in echoing rooms, surrounded by gilded panels and painted ceilings. But those soft days did not last. By the time he was 8 years old, the world had changed. His family was taken from Versailles to Paris, from Paris to prison, from prison to trial, and then the separation. In 1793, shortly after his father was executed, the young prince was torn from his mother's care. The guards took him to a different part of the Temple prison, a narrow cell, alone. He was placed in the care of a shoemaker turned revolutionary, Simon, a man loyal to the new republic. His task, to re-educate the child, to remove the tyrant blood from his soul. What happened in that cell is still debated. Louis Charles was kept in near total isolation, denied light, denied play. It said he was often silent, and when he spoke, it was in strange phrases, echoes of the slogans he had been forced to repeat. Vive la République, death to the traitors. When his mother was finally executed in late 1793, she was not allowed to see him. She had not heard his voice in months. And then, he disappeared from public view. There were guards, of course, and a record here, a sighting there. But nothing clear, nothing certain. In 1795, 2 years after his last confirmed appearance, the officials announced that Louis Charles had died. He was just 10 years old. They claimed it was illness, tuberculosis. His body, they said, was buried quickly in a mass grave. But when physicians performed an autopsy, they found a frail frame, riddled with sores, malnourished, and stunted in growth. The child had been kept in a windowless, vermin-ridden cell for over 2 years. Alone, without care, without kindness. The heart, yes, the actual heart, was secretly preserved by one of the physicians. A strange act, driven by sentiment or symbolism. It would play a role much later. But not everyone believed the story of his death. And so the mystery was born. In the years that followed, over a dozen impostors would appear. Some were boys who had escaped other prisons. Others were men convinced they were the true Dauphin, saved in secret and hidden by royalist sympathizers. The most famous of these was Karl Wilhelm Naundorf, a German clockmaker who claimed to be Louis Charles. He had memories, or claimed to, mannerisms, a certain bearing. Some former courtiers even believed him. Others called him a fraud. This game of royal echoes continued for generations. Long after the revolution had passed into history, the question lingered. Did the Dauphin really die in that cell? Modern science offered a strange coda. In the 2000s, DNA testing was performed on the preserved heart, the one taken during the autopsy in 1795. It matched DNA from Marie Antoinette's living descendants. The heart was then buried in the royal crypt at Saint-Denis outside Paris, where his parents lie. The mystery in part resolved, but not erased, because even today there remains something uncertain. Not in the facts, perhaps, but in the feeling that a child could vanish so completely, so silently, from a world that once adored him. Imagine the flicker of candlelight against the stone walls of his tiny cell. Imagine the echo of his footsteps as he paced, alone. The child who would have been king, and instead became a question. Now let us move backward in time and outward from the prison cell, to a world entirely different. A world gilded in gold, scented with rose water, and echoed by music drifting through mirrored halls. We arrive at Versailles, in the final decades before it all unraveled. Here the clocks tick differently. Here, the suffering of the poor is a distant murmur behind velvet curtains. And the coming storm is, for now, just a breeze that brushes lace cuffs and powdered wigs. Imagine yourself here. It is a crisp spring morning. Birdsong filters through the formal gardens, carefully curated, not a leaf out of place. You walk through the Galerie de Glaces, the Hall of Mirrors. The chandeliers glitter in the early light. The marble floor is cool beneath embroidered slippers. You are not in a home, you are in a performance. Versailles was never meant to be comfortable. It was meant to awe, to overwhelm, to remind everyone who entered that the Sun King had once ruled here. And his descendants were not to be questioned. Louis XVI, however, was not quite a Sun King. He was quieter, bookish, fond of locks and maps. He preferred simplicity, but Versailles allowed no such thing. He rose each morning to the lever, a ceremonial waking, a ritual of courtiers dressing him layer by layer, while others watched, not in privacy but in full view. His queen, Marie Antoinette, was far more famous, or infamous. A young Austrian archduchess thrust into this glittering cage at 14. She embraced the performance. Her gowns were extravagant. Her hair defied gravity. And yet, in her private retreat, the Petit Trianon, she tried to live more simply. She kept a dairy farm with scrubbed white fences and milkmaids in satin ribbons. A fantasy of rural life, far removed from the real thing. The nobles, meanwhile, orbited the royal couple like moons around a flickering star. Rank was everything. A misplaced glove or a forgotten bow could end a career. Each day was scheduled. The king's walk, queen's card game, the opera, the hunt. And all the while, outside the gates of Versailles, France trembled. Bread prices soared. Harvests failed. Debts mounted from past wars. And pamphlets, small seditious things, whispered of injustice. But inside the palace, the music never stopped. Banquets continued. Plates were cleared. Silk shoes tapped out minuets on polished floors. And when the rumors of unrest reached court, they were dismissed as distant troubles. Let them eat cake, the queen supposedly said, though she likely never uttered those words. The myth captured the essence of Versailles, a world too wrapped in brocade to see the fire in the fields. Even the architecture betrayed this blindness. The mirrors in the Hall of Mirrors reflected only more mirrors, endlessly folding in upon themselves. A metaphor, perhaps, for a court obsessed with its own image. By the time the revolution reached Versailles, it was almost too late to comprehend it. In October 1789, the women of Paris marched to the palace, not to admire it but to demand bread. The royal family fled that night, never to return. Versailles was left behind, not destroyed, just emptied, like a stage after the actors have gone. Today, it remains a monument to a world that ended not with a sudden blow, but with a slow forgetting. Gold leaf flaking, silk fading, whispers echoing down empty halls. As you drift now, slowly, softly, through the corridors of memory and marble, consider the weight of silence, the kind that follows music, the kind that settles like dust over a fallen kingdom. And so, we come to the end of our journey through one of history's loudest moments. Told softly, you've walked the cobbled alleys of revolutionary Paris, felt the ache in tired limbs after hours of stone breaking and silence. You've watched a king descend slowly and formally, from a throne to a wooden scaffold. You've followed the faint trace of a lost child, a life once destined for greatness, reduced to whispers and questions. And you've stood beneath gilded ceilings, where chandeliers once sparkled and court music once floated, while the world outside cracked open. This was not just a tale of blood and banners. It was a world of rhythms, the rhythm of hunger, of ceremony, of disappearance, of denial. And in the end, it was a world that, for all its velvet and violence, was made of people. People who struggled, people who hoped, people who obeyed, revolted, vanished, and endured. You don't need to remember every date, every name, or every detail. History, when told for sleep, is not a test, but a tide. It carries you across time gently, steadily, and lets you drift between the shores of memory and dream. So as the echoes of this tale fade, as Paris falls still, and Versailles goes quiet, know that you are safe and warm, in a world far removed from revolution. Let the past rest now, and with it may you too find rest. Good night.
you.